Welcome to Bent Not Broken, where we empower and motivate women by sharing real-life stories of adversity and provide expert advice on how to overcome those obstacles and help you live your best life. Now here's your host, Juanita Kelly.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 4 of Bent Not Broken. I am your host, Juanita Kelly. As an entrepreneur, I've experienced some pretty awesome successes, as well as some pretty devastating failures over the past 30 years. When I was about 18 years old, I asked the most successful person that I knew in my family, who was my uncle, if he could tell me how to start a business. He told me to open up the telephone book and tear out every page that listed a business on it that I thought to be interesting. I remember that night, I sat at my grandmother's table with her telephone book, and I went page by page by page, ripping out any page that listed a business that I thought I could do. After a few hours, I had a pile of torn yellow pages. I called my uncle and I said, I did it. Now what? I have about 100 pages here. He said to me, Nita, that means you could do anything if you really put your mind to it. I love this story because my uncle taught me a very valuable lesson. I could do anything, and the world was full of possibilities. I just had to focus my talents and my energy on them. On today's episode, we'll be talking about the 5 voices inside each of us with author and psychotherapist Shauna Hoffman. Today's episode is entitled Celebrating Your Successes. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Bent Not Broken podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of having Shauna Hoffman as our special guest. Shauna is a relationship specialist, marriage and family therapist, author, entrepreneur, and speaker. She works with her clients to help them improve communication and overcome past pain by investigating and analyzing their patterns of thinking. She is a certified behavior coach and is a member of the International Coaching Council. She also helps those struggling with self-confidence and self-awareness. She is also the host of a podcast entitled A Journey to Awareness. Welcome to the podcast, Shauna.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
And I am so excited to have you join us today. Let me tell you, I want to get right into it because I know your story and I just want to bring your story to my listeners. And I want them to understand your story so people know that anything that you have an obstacle, you can overcome it. So let's get right into it. So tell me a little bit about your backstory. I know that you're an entrepreneur.
I'm an entrepreneur. I believe that there are so many different sides to us. I believe that there's a creative, for me anyways, I have a creative side. I have a business side. I have a giving, caring side where I want to help people. And my story was such that I needed to tap into all of that. And if I didn't, I wasn't happy. So I graduated from California Institute of the Arts, which is the Disney theater school here in California.
Yes, I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah, I loved it. And it was an amazing opportunity for me and ended up being an acting coach. I ended up starting a theater company with a partner who was amazing. And we did murder mysteries when it was the big thing. Eventually, I took those murder mysteries aboard cruise ships because I had this wild passion for sailing. Then I went into partnership with Royal Caribbean because they saw that I was bringing about 400 people on every sailing. It was so successful. We had all of the best comedy improv actors here in LA. We had so much fun and we would travel and travel. And they said, you're doing such huge business. We want to partner with you. So I created Royal Caribbean's first theme cruise programs. And it was just such a honor, an absolute honor. And we traveled all over. I mean, I've taken at this point 220 cruises.
Amazing.
But at one point, there was a death aboard a Royal Caribbean ship, aka murder, a real one, and our business took a hit. and we could not promote it. Royal Caribbean, in good faith, could not promote it. And they were our biggest partner and our biggest advertisers. So we went from 400 people on a sailing every 5 weeks to 60 people 3 times a year. And I had to reinvent. In the meantime, I had this feeling like I needed to give back. So I started speaking. I did spiritual counseling with A Course in Miracles. I finally said, I have to give back. And I went back and got my master's in psychotherapy and ended up becoming a therapist. But I could only do it 2 days a week because I was on a cruise the rest of the time or traveling. And so it was this perfect balance for me. I was giving back. The acting industry was so egocentric that I needed a place that wasn't about that. It wasn't about that kind of energy. And it was perfect. So I would do that 2 days a week. And then I started to speak all over on women. And then I wrote a book, and the book Guy Free Working on Me, which is a woman's journey to self-awareness. And then I finally said, I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to be on stage. I want a podcast like you.
Amazing.
So that's kind of my journey. It's huge. But that's I believe that all of us have different sides to our personality. And if we really tap into it and honor them, and you don't have to make money at all of those different sides, you just have to honor them.
Well, let's go back. When you were working as an entrepreneur and you were doing the cruise line industry, you were working there and you had that tragedy that totally affected the way your business model worked. And you went inside and you reinvented yourself. Tell our listeners how you reinvented yourself.
So it was really interesting in that I knew the ships and how to bring groups aboard the ships so well. Sometimes the cruise directors were like, Shauna, you know my ship better than I do. I knew where every plug was. The families, the crew aboard the ship became our families. We would see them on this sailing, that sailing. I'm still really amazing friends with so many of them. I realized that I could produce events really, really easily aboard the ship. So the first one that we decided to do, I'm really about looking outside the box. And I found steampunk, and nobody had done anything aboard the ships with steampunk. So I produced my first steampunk cruise, and that took off. And I partnered with this amazing woman who had a very, very large following in the steampunk world. She really produced that piece of it, and I produced all of the onboard pieces of it. And eventually the New York Times came aboard. They filmed. We were on the front page of the, it was amazing. The travel section, New York Times, front page, Sunday edition. That was like hitting the top of the top. It was so exciting. And then steampunk kind of played itself out. One of the most amazing speakers was a writer in the sci-fi world. And she has this group called Writing Excuses with some other very, very big New York Times authors. And she said, let's do Writing Excuses aboard the ship. So we're now going on our 7th year of taking writing groups aboard the ships. And now I work with quite a few different writing groups, and it's a perfect conference. So I basically started something called Sea Conferences and turned my knowledge of the ships around to bringing other creative groups. I love bringing creative groups. I love bringing speakers, writers, artists, anybody that has a following that really wants to do something different. So
it's just amazing to me that you took such, some people would have had that experience and said, you know what, the hell with this, I'm done. And you found the inner strength to go, let me sit down in this for a minute and analyze and reinvent myself. And that is commendable.
Thank you so much. I feel like it's just a part of who I am. I love creating. And I also, these things are my babies. I just never want to give up the knowledge that I have. I love to share the knowledge. I'll work with other travel agents and teach them about how to do the same thing. I was a guest speaker for cruise planners. I was one of their keynote speakers in Mexico a couple of years ago. My passion is helping other people do what they love. And I was helping them create their own theme cruises because there's so many different ways to take people aboard the ships once COVID is over.
Yeah. So in your practice, let's go back a little bit. So after you decided that you wanted to help people and you went back to school and you got your master's and you started working in practice and you started implementing the tools that you learned in school and started helping other people, you came across understanding what self-awareness was. Explain that.
To me, self-awareness is probably the most basic of all of our tools of self-growth. When you think of awareness, all right, we think of what's outside of ourselves. I'm aware of what's outside my window. I'm aware of what's on my desktop right now. I'm aware of the fact that my shirt's too tight or my hair is in my eyes. It's exterior outside awareness. Well, there's the same kind of awareness that comes from inside. I'm aware of what I'm feeling right now. I'm aware of if I'm afraid. I'm aware of if I'm excited. I am aware, self-aware of my emotions and my needs. I know that something's missing in my life right now. I'm aware enough to know that I'm not happy. I'm aware enough to know that this relationship doesn't feel good. I'm aware enough to know that I'm madly in love and this one is the best relationship I've had. But you have to be in touch with yourself. You have to take moments to become self-aware and check in. It's really checking in on yourself instead of looking outside of yourself. Does that make sense?
Most definitely. I know that I personally struggle with self-confidence and listening to my inner voice. Sometimes the self-awareness is a little too real for me sometimes, and I tend to try to ignore it because it's easier. What would you tell someone who's doing those things that I'm doing?
That we call it denial.
Yes.
But denial comes from fear. It's just a fear that you don't know how to fix it. And that's when you have to reach outside of yourself and get help from someone else, or the learning, self-learning, taking up books, reading about, listening to podcasters, listening to speakers, talking to other people, not being afraid to look at yourself. It's really funny that when we're afraid to look at ourselves, a lot of times it's for two reasons. We're afraid to look at ourselves and pat ourselves on the back and say what a great job we've done. And then on the other side, we're also afraid of ourselves, Juanita. We're afraid to look at ourselves and realize the deficits that we have. Now, deficits are not a negative. What it means is that there's a wonderful place to fill up.
Yes. So you're changing your perspective on how you're thinking.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love a change in perception. I studied and spoke a lot about A Course in Miracles. And A Course in Miracles says a change in perception is what a miracle is. All it is a change in perception. And if you can change the perception for yourself, Juanita, and not being afraid to look at those pieces of you, because also a lot of those things that we think are negatives actually work for ourselves in many other ways.
Mm-hmm.
People with ADD think that, oh my God, my ADD. Well, it actually gives them the opportunity to see more things around them than other people can.
I have to agree with you. Yeah.
Right? People with ADD are some of the most creative people because they look outside the box. They're not looking at the linear thinking of something. And that's a beautiful thing.
So when I sit and I think of like, I went through this horrible experience and I experienced this loss and I had to sit in it for a while and actually maybe I sat in it too long and I had to let that emotion process. And after that emotion processed, I started to think to myself, you know what? What I need to do is really process it on a deeper level. And I started writing down these experiences that I had. And as I wrote them down, Shauna, I started to realize I was healing myself from them.
Yeah.
As I was writing.
Yeah.
And it was really amazing to me because I think that helped me become even more self-aware. Where I was lacking before, the writing things down really, really helped me process that.
Oh, I love writing, journaling, because what happens is in our brains, we get on one thought and we stick on that one thought. When we start writing, it starts with the sentence, oh, I feel like I failed in that business. And then your mind can go and take that to the next step. Why do I think I failed? Why is it that I'm so hard on myself? Wait a minute, maybe it wasn't all failure. Why do I even say the word failure? What am I thinking? Why am I being so hard on myself? And all of a sudden, you do your own therapy on yourself. So I always say to people, start writing about something, even if it's a partner or somebody you're having a fight with, and write 3 pages, and you will find yourself in a totally different place when you end it than where you began. But if you don't do that or have a way to process, some people don't do it on paper. Some people can sit in meditation and do it, or with a therapist to do it, or with a friend who's a good communicator and good listener and has good morals, ethics, and values to help you. But what happens is you start to see what you have to offer. You start to see what you did great in that. Did you end up figuring that out?
Personally, I think I really ended up figuring out because I was writing down these little stories about myself and learning more about what made me tick and what motivated me to do the things that I was doing. I developed a memoir of sorts. And and I started thinking, wow, I'm not the only one who has these issues or experiences in their life. I'm not the only one who's felt this before or experienced anxiety or depression or anything.
Not
So
only
I,
not the only one. If you were, the world would be an amazing place. But
what, right?
every single solitary person that I know, there isn't one person that doesn't have their own challenges. But challenges are good. I look at it as if we're climbing this ladder. And at every learning lesson, we go, oh, yeah, got that. And we get to go another step up the ladder until we're at the top, which I call the height of spiritual, psychological, emotional perfection. Well, we are all got a long ways to go. But every experience, every single one that we conquer, and remember, quote unquote success, financial success or business success doesn't mean that we haven't conquered something. So for every, like when my business turned around, I went, okay, well, there goes my mystery cruise business, literally took a dive into the water. And I could have, like you said, walked away, or I could look at what did I get out of that? What did I learn? I learned how to produce aboard the ships. I learned everything about that. And so I could take that into the next step. How did I even become a speaker the way I am? Because I was a film actress. I was an actress that knew how to communicate, and I had energy and I had life and I loved to share it. And so that's what I brought to my speaking. Now, when it came to the podcast, I thought, okay, I have all of this knowledge I want to share. I knew nothing about podcasting, but I aligned myself with someone who did. That's all we have to do. We don't have to be perfect at something to start it.
Yes.
We also don't have to think we weren't perfect when we move on from something.
What are those little voices that are inside all of our heads that are telling us no, maybe, or yes, maybe? How do we know which ones we should be listening to?
I love that question. My book, Guide for You Working on Me, is based on something called transactional analysis. And what is the belief behind that is there's 5 voices inside our head. And one of the voices is the critical parent voice. And the critical voice is really important. It's the one that sets boundaries for us. It's the one that says, you're not healthy for me, you're not good for me, stay away. It really enforces our morals, ethics, and values. Don't cheat, don't lie, don't steal. And we need that voice. But when it becomes too loud, it becomes controlling and judgmental. And that's the voice that tends to come into play when we become afraid. The other side of that voice is what we call the nurturing voice, nurturing parent voice. And that voice says, you're amazing. You can do anything. Come on, I believe in you. You're a star. And these 2 voices fight.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we actually need our critical parent voice, but we need it healthy, which means, okay, that's not working anymore. I need to walk away. That's healthy, but that's not working anymore. You lousy, failure. That doesn't work. There's one really important voice, and it's called the adult voice, and it's the unemotional, logical voice. So we have to sometimes look at things without emotion. We have to look at them and think, I need to be logical. I needed to logically know that I couldn't continue doing the mystery cruises because logically I was losing money. Logically, I could look at the facts, which is a word I love so much, about the talents that I did have and what I walked away with and what my company still had. I had a corporation. I had the travel business. I had an enormous amount of connections. So I could logically look at those facts, and that's how I could reinterpret what I was going to do with that business. So we need our logical voice, and we need it unemotional. We need to take the emotion out. And the word failure, that word doesn't fit anywhere. I wish they would just delete it from the dictionaries, from everything, because I can't find any good reason for that word. It's a negative word. The other 2 sides that I love are the childlike sides of us. So the one that I tap into all the time is the rebellious / creative child. It's the side that rocks the boat for change and thinks without any boundaries whatsoever. It's the side that says, come on, you can do it. Let's go do art. I don't care if anybody likes it or not. I'm going to go create something. I'm going to do a steampunk cruise. You're going to do what? Oh, I know you've never heard of it, but come on, let's go. And it's the side that's every creative person has it, and every person has it who's not creative, but needs to find a side of them that allows them to be free, allows them to play. It's something that's missing in so many relationships. They don't have that creative, rebellious, playful side of them. It's the side that takes action with no fear of consequences. And that's what we need in order to start a new business. And that's what we need in order to move to another city or state or country. And that's what we need in order to create a piece of art. We need to take action with no fear of consequences. So that's kind of the other side is the adaptive side. That side's the side that says, you're right, I'm wrong, I'm sorry. It's a very gentle, very adaptive side. And it also is a side that helps us adapt to change very easily because we're not caught up in the outcome of something. So the child side of us is this wonderful side. It's rebellious, it's adaptive, it allows us to think outside the box, it allows us to adapt to absolutely everything and anything. The parent voice is the protector and the nurturer. It can also be the controller and the judgment. And then there's the adult state. And really, the adult state is the one that gets everything done.
Mm-hmm. So now you've given us these 5 voices that are inside of all of our heads. So once we understand what these voices do independently and even together, and we can start understanding what it is that makes us tick, can we ever come to a place in our lives where we can move past our individual hurt?
Oh, yes.
Thank you for saying yes.
Yes. Those 5 sides of our voices we need balanced. So that's the work in therapy. That's my entire modality of working with clients on an individual basis, is to help them understand that we need all 5 of those voices, but we need them healthy and we need them balanced. In order to get over a hurt, a major hurt, we actually need to come into a couple of the different sides. The adaptive side says, I'm sorry. Well, that means that we have to look at our piece of what happened in whatever hurt took place.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily mean, and I don't want women who have been abused to go back and think that they brought it on themselves. But their piece of being adaptive was not believing that they deserved better than that. So, in order to heal, it's not even healing with that other person, it's healing themselves. It's healing themselves and realizing I deserve, and being a little rebellious, saying, screw this. This is about me. The rebellious voice is the me state. So when we're hurt by someone, we have to take a look at ourselves and what were the things that got us to that place, and what do we never want to experience again that we have control over. So it's difficult if you're in an abusive relationship, because you've usually found a very adaptive voice and your critical voice has been shut down. That's the voice that protects yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to grow that voice and say, no, I deserve, you stay away from me, you're not good for me. And then you have to reach out and find other people to help you. So what are you talking about when you say hurt? What kind of hurt?
Well, when I'm thinking that you want to move past the hurt, any hurt to me would mean any kind of emotional trauma or even physical trauma. Physical trauma, after you have an injury, those things can heal. But the trauma of the emotion of you being hurt lasts a long time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's really deep work on honoring yourself and knowing what you deserve in life, and knowing that you didn't necessarily bring that on yourself, though it was in your life. You've learned from it and moved on. I did a podcast where I imagined that instead of our age, that we had this little like meter on our forehead, and every time we learned a lesson, the meter just went ching 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 a little higher.
That's wonderful.
Right, I got that lesson. Now I'm up 3 points. It's like a video game. I got that. I got past that level, and I think that's the way we have to understand, is that every learning lesson is just that. You might start as a kindergartner in a relationship and walk away as a high schooler. And then you still have some more to learn until you become, until you're in college in relationships. And it's okay. It's okay to not be perfect, and it's okay to still need to learn. And by doing that, sometimes it's easier to let go of hurts, because a lot of times we blame ourselves to such a degree when we're hurt that we don't allow ourselves the growth that can come out of it.
Wow. So you have a podcast, and as we said earlier, it's called A Journey to Awareness. And in your podcast, you talk about all these things all the time.
Yes, I talk about as much as I can. I interview some amazing people. I want to interview you, Juanita, because your story is so, so amazing to me. And talk about, talk about somebody who keeps reinventing themselves. I absolutely love that. And so on the podcast, I look at everything from the self-awareness of our boundaries or judgments or boyfriends or girlfriends, friendships, parents. I have an episode on mothers and daughters. God, I think every one of us needs to listen to that one.
Most definitely. I have a 25-year-old. Most definitely.
Right?
The teens were hard.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I'm really excited because I have not in a year, I have 54 episodes. I haven't interviewed a man. And this afternoon, I'm going to actually interview my husband, the first man on my show.
Wow. What are you guys going to talk about?
He is another person who has reinvented himself a million times. He's so creative. And we're going to talk about that. He was a Peace Corps volunteer in Africa and then Haitian art dealer. And just he's done so many things. And I just love his passion for reinventing himself. And then we're going to get in a little bit about marriage because I got the person to talk to about it.
We've been on the journey with you. Yeah.
Exactly. We have been together a very long time. So I thought it'd be fun. So the podcast has been a real joy for me because it's interesting because what you'll find too, Juanita, is you're talking out into space, kind of. And you put it out into the universe and you put it out, into social media. And you really don't know how many people are listening to it until you get that report every day of how many downloads you've had. Because it's not like speaking in person where you see the audience and you're hearing them and they're going, oh, yeah. And I'll get emails from people or somebody will make a post. But in general, it's really a different medium for sure.
Wow. I'll tell you, I've been doing radio and I was doing podcasting before podcasting was a thing. And I'll tell you, I've always loved it. And I've always loved speaking to people and getting to know new people. I want to just tell everybody at home, everyone who's listening, check out Shauna's podcast. It's entitled A Journey to Awareness. It is jam-packed. You guys are going to walk away learning so much about yourself and a little bit about what she does. Shauna, I thank you for talking to us today and taking time out of your busy practice and your busy schedule to join us. You have shared some amazing, amazing insight. How can everyone at home get more information about you?
You are so sweet. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a website, workingonme.com. All of the podcasts are there on the blog itself. So each one is there. It's on A Journey to Awareness podcast with Shauna Hoffman is on Spotify, Apple, every kind of podcast medium that you listen to. I would love any feedback. You can write to me on workingonme.com, Shauna at workingonme.com. I have all kinds of articles on relationships, on all kinds of stuff. And then also, I'll start putting up, once COVID is over, all of the different events. Because, of course, with my passion for cruising, once it opens, I'm going to take a whole bunch of people on a cruise ship.
I'm coming.
Yes.
Tell me in.
Yes.
Well, thank you again, Shauna. I can't wait to listen to your next podcast with your husband and learn a little bit about relationships and how you guys stay together and you make it through. This is wonderful.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me, Juanita.
On the next episode of Bent Not Broken, we talk with author and speaker Sheila Sutherland as we discuss our aha moment. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
This has been Bent Not Broken with Juanita Kelly. Thanks for listening. You can find us online at www.bentnotbroken.co, all major podcast platforms and YouTube. Be sure to follow us on social media at Bent Not Broken Podcast.